Shannon Shea, he is a special effects guy, makeup guy. He's done all sorts of things. He's directing, he's writing, he's producing. He's done everything. How would you describe yourself?
Wow, Jerry, it's. I would say that right now, I would describe myself as a filmmaker. I think that's probably a general enough term that covers it all. I think in 2013, I produced a couple of films. One of them, Scream of the Devil, which got limited release in October of last year, and now is looking to go to DVD. And I have been writing. I've got a project in development right now called Mr. BB, and I just finished the first volume of my book about my experience in special effects makeup called I'm Rubber Your Glue. So I would say that right now I think filmmaker is probably a safe enough term to use at this moment in my career.
I always think about, right now there's that term maker. There's the magazine makers, sort of the revolution of 3D printers and people doing things sort of on their own and making their own things,
right,
like toy makers. And I always thought you would you're my idea of what I thought a toy maker would look like.
It's so weird that you say that, because when I went to CalArts back in 1980, I met the daughter. It's going to sound weird, but stay with me. The daughter of a friend of my parents who lived in Palmdale, California, and she had just graduated from California Institute of the Arts as an artist. And, I had my portfolio with me because back in the 80s, everyone had their portfolios with them at all times. Mm. And I remember she looked at my portfolio and she went, "Oh, I get it. You're a toy maker."
Wow.
And at the time, I was, 18 years old and full of piss and vinegar. And I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm an artist," And, in retrospect, I think she was probably 100% right. I think a lot of special effects people at the height of what we did, we were glorified toy makers, absolutely, and making, like Mike Tursick said about Jurassic Park, you got to play with the greatest dinosaur toys ever made. Yeah. And, I love the fact that I was able to do that, being a lifelong dinosaur person.
Now, you worked on Predator. You worked on Dances with Wolves.
Dances with Wolves, absolutely.
Terminator 2.
Terminator 2, sure.
Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park, Spy Kids 2. The list goes on. My uncut resume is 6 pages long.
Wow.
I know, and that's why I couldn't put all of that in one book. Otherwise, it would have been like that Mario Bava tome.
Yeah.
900 pages.
Yeah.
All the colors would be dark, and you're like, you could murder someone with that book.
I have a copy of that Tim Lucas's book.
I love it. Don't get me wrong.
I do too. Book. But when I first got it, I actually threw my back out. I always tell him about this way. I unpacked it, and then I was just sitting, and I had the box on my lap, picked it up, and as I twisted around to set the book down, my back just went like that, and I was out for weeks.
I think that they actually gave those books to the actors that were training for that film, The 300, and they had to carry them with them all the time.
Now your book isn't that thick, but I'm guessing it's kind of heavy.
Well, okay, it's the second book. I was just going through titles, and I just actually started writing the second book about a week and a half ago, which it really encompasses, I would say, probably less films. There's less titles in the second one, but they're heavy. All the ones you mentioned, basically, it's my time between Pumpkinhead and Jurassic Park. And then there you have films like Child's Play 2 and Dances with Wolves and Terminator 2 and Batman Returns, and so a lot of these kind of big projects, and some smaller ones that you may never have heard of. One is called The Being from Earth. So some of those are, and they're just great experiences, and I certainly hope that people that read the book take it in the spirit that it's intended.
Now,
because
how did you get the title of the book? What, I mean, it's from, I guess
well,
it's,
I mean, that's the whole. Well, I'll be honest, because to come, I'm rubber, you're glue.
yeah.
Obviously, is the whole schoolyard chant. I'm
Mm-hmm.
rubber, you're glue. Whatever you say bounces off of me and sticks to you. So it was one of those things where I was trying to come up with a clever title for the book, and I'll be honest. I mean, I wrote one of the manuscripts for Rick Baker's book, and at the time, it was at one point it was called Rick Baker Monster Maker, and then it was called Monster Maker. Then it was I Was a Teenage Monster Maker. So Rick was looking for these very clever titles for his book, and I have no idea where he is with it now and what title he's working under. But so I was kind of thinking, okay, well that's kind of, I don't want to be like Shannon Shea Creature Maker or Shannon Shea Monster at Bay or whatever the heck it is. So I was just thinking about it, and one of the titles I was going to use was The Unfortunate Witness to the Truth. And then I thought, wow, that's a little heavy. That's if I was a Washington D.C. correspondent and had been behind closed. Because the truth of the matter is when you are the guy behind the guy, you tend to see more than anybody else. And that's the truth, because people who are in those positions of power and responsibility, they have a heavier crown to wear than the person that's just, the person just beneath them. And because I don't have my own studio and I don't have any employees and I don't, necessarily, we're talking about things that happened 30 years ago. I just figured it was time just to kind of let people know and warts and all, because one of the things I also do is I also spend a lot of time teaching, because I'll be honest with you, I really enjoy it. I didn't think I would. But Winston,
I love your tutorials, and I love the stuff you do with Stan Winston School of Character.
Right, and Matt Winston actually convinced me to do this. Matt came to see me a few years ago, and he told me about the Stan Winston School, what they were planning on doing, and I'll never forget my comment was, why would you do this? And it just seems like such a silly thing. Is this a viable business? I mean, are there that many people who want to do creature effects? And at the time, he gave such a great analogy, and it sticks to me to this day. He said, how many jobs are there in professional basketball? And yet how many people play basketball in their yards every day and in schools all over the world? And he's right, because you realize, yes, you're training, you do train, especially with my business courses that I teach there, you are training people to be professional. But at the same time, there are people who, you said it earlier, who just like to make things.
Yeah.
And to me, that's part of our humanity, our fragile humanity, as we, keep tromping through this digital age. And I'm not saying anything against digital work. I respect it. I like it when it's done well. I'm as big a fan of Pacific Rim as anybody. But I still think there's something important about being able to make things with your hands. And it's such power. I can't tell you, it's such power. And I love passing all of my knowledge on to young people. And when I see it click in their eyes, there's nothing more rewarding to me. I just feel like, I turned a switch on in someone's brain. And it's great because they realize, wow, I can do this. It's like, yeah, absolutely you can do this. Highly trainable.
Your classes
So,
are to me are really inspiring, and I mentioned this. I mentioned this to Matt. I had him on the show a long time ago, and and there was a point where I wasn't really interested. I mean, I had him on because I thought the idea of doing a school online was kind of interesting. I've always liked special effects, but I've never really thought, I'm going to try this or anything. But I started looking at the tutorials and stuff, and the people that responded, the comments are amazing, because there's people from all over the world that are taking these classes, and that are taking these that love Stan Winston films, and and they want to be able to create monsters and dinosaurs and make things, and they are the greatest people ever. I mean, it's so funny.
Yeah, it's true.
I've met so many great friends just because, I you know, had done a radio show with Matt Winston, and and that, and just it's just the people. It's the greatest audience in the world. I imagine it would be so great for that crowd to actually have your book, because I imagine your book, not only is it telling stories, but the reason I was asking about the title, it does make me think of the playground, and I was thinking about, well, Hollywood is kind of like a playground.
Hmm.
There's going to be people that are mean and just trying to. There's going to be people that are going to be your best friend, but there's also going to be people that are trying to maneuver their way up the ladder. And
Yeah.
I would imagine your book would be helpful to that same audience, to watch out for things, but also to see things, in their own life that might, they might be able to, choose a better path, and that kind of thing.
Right. Well, I will say this. It's, things have changed a lot too, I mean, the things, when, there was one of the first things that got cut out of the book was a lengthy introduction. And one of the things I said was, and it's the truth, we were working in a field that really didn't even have a name, because people kept calling it different things. It was special animatronic effects, special makeup effects, special character effects. It's like it didn't even have a name,
Yeah.
and that's the truth, because when people used to say to me, like, for years and years, my parents really didn't understand that I didn't do makeup. To this day, I even tell my students, and I teach, believe it or not, I teach prosthetic effects and I teach makeup effects at cinema makeup school. And I will tell the students, I go, I am not a makeup artist. I am not a member of the local 706. I don't go to movie sets and glue prosthetics on people. I know how to, and I can take you all the way from beginning to the end. I can do it all. I've been trained to do it all, but I am not a makeup artist. I was a creature effects person. I preferred working with puppets and with suits and things and animatronics, RC puppets and things, because that was the lazy man's version of stop motion animation. I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a stop motion animator, and I really thought that's what I was going to do. And I got to Cal Arts, and lo and behold, I was, sitting there with other animators and watching what they were doing, and I didn't have the patience at 18 years old to sit there and make, creature films one frame at a time. I just didn't have the patience. So the next thing was making puppets, actually puppeteering things in front of the camera, because it was instant gratification. It was the folly of youth, Jerry. It was the folly of youth. So.
Now, you actually, it makes me think that, you, among all the things you do, you're a performer. And I would say through the creations that you make, you're working through those things. I mean, that's the way I feel about it. I mean, I've watched all your Phantom Harbor stuff. I love it.
Oh my God, you've seen the show.
Yeah, I've seen the show. I love it. I
Yeah.
think it's great. And
Thanks.
but in other things I've seen. Oh gosh, what was the one? What was the one film about the talent agency for the Universal Monsters and?
The United Monster Talent Agency.
Yeah, and I love that idea that someone.
Well, that was Greg Dictero. That wasn't me.
No. I'm talking about the. But didn't you work on that?
I did. I helped. Yeah, I helped work some of that with it. That's really Greg's baby. Though.
Well, but what I was saying was. What I was saying was like there's an agency that you can go to that you could have these monsters do these things. I was thinking like each monster is a different character of your talents. You like someone could go to you and say, "Well, I would like to learn about, or can you show me about makeup?" Well, I'm not really a makeup artist, but here, and then that part of that character comes. You're like a full service agency is what I was trying to compare the.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Well, that's true. It is true. Well, and that's the thing. That's why when Matt came to me and said, we want you to do lessons, what would you do? And I said, well, I was looking at what the other guys were doing, especially the other former lifers of Stan Winston, John Rosengrant and Shane and Alec and Tom. And they seemed to be really high-end things. I mean, it was definitely geared for people who wanted to work in the industry. But for me, the real magic happens when you're a kid and you're at home and you're making a movie in your backyard or your garage, and you just want to do something. You just want to tell your story, and you want some visual thing to tell your story. So that's where I cooked up the idea of garage monsters, and that to me is probably like, people go, gosh, what do you want to be remembered for? That's probably what I would be happy to be remembered for after I pass on, is the guy that encouraged kids to make their films in their garages, because to me, I still love watching them. I don't care how boring they are. I love watching it. And the more outlandish and ridiculous the stuff is, and the more ambitious the stuff is, the more I get excited, because to me, that's like the pure mineral right out of the ground. It hasn't been touched by a bunch of egomaniacal
corporations
agents or corporations. It's just this person, this artist, this young girl or young boy who has this drive to make their movie in their backyard, and they've somehow constructed, cities and clouds and things that they've made out of cardboard and cotton. And I just think that's amazing.
Yeah, me too.
I can't tell you how much I love that. I really do.
I was watching a BBC documentary about Mary Shelley, and it was about Percy Shelley and Mary Shelley and Lord Byron. But then it started talking about Mary Shelley. She's like 18 or 19 years old when she wrote Frankenstein, and it was like that here's this teenage girl that created this thing, and it's still alive today. And I mean, I love, and it doesn't matter. I can watch any movie that has Frankenstein in it, no matter how bad it is. There's that character, and no matter how badly made up it is, it's just something about that. And I always thought, well, wow, we have an opportunity, I would imagine now, for anybody making their own films in the backyard or doing their own webcam, podcasts or anything, that they might actually create an original character that would last, for centuries. Just,
Yeah. Jerry, I can't tell you. I love that. I'm with you on that. Yeah. I love it, and it's one of the reasons I love going to Monsterpalooza. Nothing makes me happier than to walk through Monsterpalooza and walk by a table, and there is a young person there sitting there with their monsters or masks or whatever they have, and I have never heard of them. Like, I don't know who this person is, and it's remarkable work.
Right.
I get excited, and it's interesting because, I'm guessing my colleagues get excited, but I know there was a time where people would get really, nervous about things like that.
Yeah.
And, it happened when Steve Wang and Matt Rose came down from San Jose. I mentioned that in my first book, is that, then when they came down, they were the Gould brothers, so they were known as the Gould brothers from Fangoria magazine, because they'd won this, international contest with their masks. But, they were new blood, and may I say, they really came into the industry fully functional. I'm sure Matt Rose would tell you that he learned things here and there, and I'm sure he did. He worked for Rick Baker for years, and the same thing with Steve Wang. I'm sure Steve would tell you that, he worked at, Rick's and Harry and Henderson's, and I'm sure he picked up tricks and things there. But listen, it's like my old college roommate, Steve Bird. Some of these people just come out of the box ready to use. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Steve, we were both 18 at CalArts, and he was already producing artwork that was as good, if not better, than what Joe Johnston had done for Star Wars.
Wow.
It just, in sketchbooks after sketchbooks. He was, and at the time I was watching him, because he started absorbing, Ron Cobb, who designed a lot of stuff for Alien and Conan the Barbarian.
I became a fan of Ron Cobb when it was was it L.A. Weekly or L.A. Free Press? I can't remember, but he did those political cartoons. And
L.A. Free Press. Oh yeah, back in the day, sure.
I was thinking about when the whole Charlie Hebdo office massacre took place in Paris the other day. I was thinking about I was just thinking well, I wonder what Ron Cobb. Wonder what his thought of that is, because he was a political cartoonist, and then it's just amazing that somebody, I guess, imagine Dan O'Bannon said, hey, here's this guy doing this. Let's use him in this. And a tree of things grow from taking
Right.
someone. But I was going to say when this last Monster Palooza, I guess it was the son of Monster Palooza I was at. Casey Love had a little boy, and I guess I don't know how old the little kid is, but he had his booth there, and there's this woman that was dressed up. I guess it was the school, the cinema makeup school did some makeup on her, and she looked frightening. But I mean, it was colorful and frightening. And his little baby had no fear whatsoever of of this, and she actually got down on the floor with the kid, and just seeing kids when they see artwork and they go, wow, it just takes me back to when you first see your first monster or science fiction film or Godzilla movie. You go to a convention and you see these little kids with that same look in their eye, and
Didn't the former publisher and editor of Cinefantastic, that sense of wonder, is what he used to call it. Yeah, and I understand that. It's that sense of wonder.
Yeah.
And it's I'm listen. I'm not gonna. I'll just tell you. The other day I was listening to another podcast, and they had Steve Johnson on there, and Steve said something. Steve Johnson, for those who are listening and don't know who he is, he was a former Rick Baker protege who started his own makeup effects company and did some of the most inventive makeup effects ever. Freak and Bicentennial Man and the NTIs for the Abyss. Steve, but tremendous. But he said something that really hits the nail on the head. And again, he, like me, was not putting down any digital stuff because, as an artist, you respect it. It's like anything. Some people paint with oils, some people paint with watercolors.
Right.
Some people, whatever, use Photoshop. It's whatever you want to do. But he said the difference between what I call special effects or what he was talking about, practical effects, versus new digital effects, or what I now term visual effects. So it used to be special effects, now it's visual effects. He said in the old days, people would look at stuff and go, how the hell did they do that? Now they look at it and they just go, it's computer.
Yeah.
So now they know the trick. They know the trick. There's not a question in their mind what they're looking at. They know the trick. And I don't know of a single person that goes to see a film like Armageddon or any of these big disaster films, 2012, who actually thinks they're looking at footage of the end of the world. I think everyone kind of knows that it is what it is. It's just a big digital fiasco. But in the old days, when you would look at something, you would look at the dinosaur from Jurassic Park, and you'd think to yourself, okay, now what am I looking at? Is it a puppet? Is that a digital effect?
And you know what? That shows you something. That still holds up today. I was amazing that the effects still hold up. There's movies, there'll be some sort of, I can't even think of a movie, but a recent movie that, I'll tell you, and I know this is not really an effects movie, but I loved the movie. It was David Fincher's, the girl with the dragon tattoo.
Beautiful film.
Yeah, and I like that movie. It's you wouldn't think of that being an effects movie or anything, but I was really caught up and I'd already seen it in theater and loved it. But I was watching it the other day, and there's an explosion that takes place in the movie, and I couldn't believe how fake that explosion looked. It was totally like like After Effects or something. It was just it was just like the most unreal. It looked like 3D flames. It was just the fakest looking. Ugh. And I was like, I can't believe that, when I first saw that movie, that never popped out. But, but a few years has passed, and it already...
Yeah, it's interesting. But you see that there's... What I like to tell people is I go to films like RoboCop, and you look at not the remake, the original RoboCop, and you look at the marriage of incredible makeup effects and the top-of-the-line stop-motion effects. Like when you saw Ed 209,
right.
I don't think that for 2 seconds you thought to yourself, oh, my God, there's a robot. But at the same time, you might have thought to yourself, what am I looking at there? Because especially when Ed 209 falls down the stairs,
right.
and he's just flipping out, kicking and screaming, and Phil is taking complete advantage of his go motion rig.
Mm-hmm.
That looks so effing real.
Yeah.
And to this day, I mean, and the whole murder scene of Peter Weller, which is just brutal,
Oh, I know.
and an incredible combination of, Peter, rigged with squibs and makeup effects and puppets, that are, bleeding, and oh my God, it's just amazing. It's amazing.
And I like, and then, and that's the thing about the artist, the Phil Tippett, who I actually I got to see. Well, I've actually met him before, but got to see him just recently at a convention. He was out. He's got that line of Chronicle. I don't know who it is. They're making version. I guess they're making like the RoboCop. No, they're making the. Which one is it? It's from the sequel, RoboCop 2. But anyway, so he was doing the convention thing, and I always, he is definitely like what I was saying about, a toy maker, and I don't mean that in the bad way, but I mean when the ED309, is that what it is? ED309?
Yeah, Ed 309. Sure.
Yeah, Ed 309. When it fell down the bottom of the stairs and it was dying, that little foot twitch that it had, do you remember? I just thought, like, wow, that is so cool that someone, that it's dying. That with that little flinch, was someone working through that machine and showing you.
But I will say something. It's funny that you say that because all of that can be traced back to King Kong.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's amazing because, you have Ray Harryhausen, who if you watch, like, I want to say it's, I don't think it's Golden Voyage of Sinbad. I'm trying to think of which. Well, it's definitely in the Medusa from Clash of the Titans. Mm-hmm. But he always loved having that kind of, tail twitched death. The tail twitches and dies. Right. And if you watch King Kong, the original King Kong, after they gassed the Stegosaurus and are walking past, and Willis O'Brien and his crew, the big tail is coming up, and they're going, "Oh, look out!" And as the tail comes down the last time, you see it do its little rattlesnake,
Oh, that's right, yeah.
As it goes down. So, it's one of those things that King Kong, the Tyrannosaurus Rex comes out for the fight, and they start screaming, and what does the Tyrannosaurus Rex do? It scratches its muzzle. Then you watch Gwangi. Gwangi comes out. What does Gwangi do? It scratches its muzzle. So this kind of thing keeps getting passed generation to generation because the person that does it is thinking back to what they liked as a kid.
Right.
And it's just, I love that. I love that it's kind of this, like you said, it's a legacy of performance that gets passed on. It's the creation of a performance. And I want to go back to what you said about that because Stan Winston, God bless him, Stan used to say that all the time, is that, we were character creators. Like I said, I don't think Stan liked being called special makeup effects. I think Stan would have loved to have been, special character effects. And he would fight. And he really, really fought for us. He was he pushed us into being pretty much widely accepted as Screen Actors Guild, performers, when that was part of it, And I think that, to be honest with you, I think that's why he hired the people he hired. I mean, if you ever spent time with Alec Gillis or Tom Woodruff or Shane Mahan, these are people with big personalities, and they're very funny, and they're really entertaining, and they're very personable. So they not only can hold their own on set against actors and filmmakers and represent Stan as well, but they also are very good performers, and they really put something into all their performers. And I will say the same thing, and I know I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, Jerry, but if anyone didn't know this, I'm going to tell you, Rick Baker is a closet actor. He is a closet actor.
Oh.
This man, I've seen so many pictures of him just doing makeup on himself for fun.
Oh, that's the thing I've noticed just recently. I mean, I've noticed okay, you can go back to this, but I was just talking with my wife about, how it's big on YouTube now for people to make tutorials. And for someone like Rick Baker, a multiple Oscar winner, to go and sit down and show, videotape him putting makeup on himself and explaining to you what he's doing, for like just a little, what is he getting out of it other than, spreading his love of the art or the craft?
Well, that comes from Dick Smith. I'm going to tell you, and when I was writing his book, and we talked quite frequently, that came from Dick Smith, because both of them had very similar things happen as they were coming up through the ranks, which is they were running up against people who would not share information. And so as a reaction to that in New York, Dick had to basically develop his own techniques. I mean, he really did. And it became known that there were like basically two camps. There was the Dick Smith camp that was primarily East Coast people, and Dick trained a lot of people. There were a lot of people who contacted him, and I did
too.
You know, and he just shared everything. He would just, until he started his course, you would just get it in the mail. He would just send you like these Xerox pages that he had about running foam latex, running R&D foam latex, making molds, how to make a good piece mold, you know, all this stuff that now, between places like Cinema Makeup School and the Stan Winston School and all that stuff, the Tom Savini School back in Pittsburgh, all these places, it's like, you know, back then this didn't exist, and it was through efforts of people like Dick Smith who would just throw the information out there. And if you think about it, it's brilliant, because then it's no longer people keeping possession of their jobs because they know how the trick is done. Now it is people who are pushing the envelope, who are pushing the art technically and artistically, who are the forerunners, because you can't just, I say this to my students all the time, you can't be good enough anymore. There's no such thing as good enough in this industry. You have got to be excellent every single day. You got it. The bar has been pushed so far up that, you know, and there's so many people who have access to this information, and they're brilliant. They're brilliant people who love it, absolutely love it. They're cosplayers. They're filmmakers. They're people who love this stuff. See, so, you know, in the 80s, I mean, I'm speaking for myself too, you know, I was good enough at a time where you could be good enough. If I had to compete in the workforce, at my level where I am artistically, if I was 22 or 23 right now, trying to get into studios to work, I would have a hard time, because the bar is so freaking high, you know, which is one of the reasons why I don't mind stepping back and teaching, because after 30 years, Jerry, it's time for someone else to carry the torch for a while, you know? So,
speaking of sharing, how could someone get your book? Where?
Well, right now it's available only through Gumroad.com.
Gumroad.
And it's I'm Rubber Your Glue on Gumroad.com. And it's $15, which is, you know, it's not going to break the bank. And this is, I'll be honest with you, it's over 90,000 words, like 96,000 words. And, it's when I researched what memoirs generally ran, they generally run about 80,000 words. So I was way over. So
a great book like, what was it? A Brave New World is only 60,000 words. So that's a classic, you know?
It is a classic.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that I was working with an editor, and they were saying, you know, try to come in at 80. Try to come in at 80,000. So I hit 96 before I turned it in. And I just know it's going to get cut down to 80,000 words. I mean, I know already, because we've discussed cuts. I know where the cuts are going to be made. So a friend of mine, Mike Spatola, who is a longtime colleague and a really brilliant makeup artist,
yes, he is,
who has his own books, by the way, which are, I mean, must-haves. Monstrous makeup things.
I just got both volumes.
See, can I say something? And isn't it amazing that you get this book and you open it up and you realize there's nothing like this out there.
There's
right
nothing.
now.
Oh my God!
No.
I always think, if I'd had this when I was 13 years old,
he would be brilliant, you know. And
the photographs are great.
The photographs, and Mike's a photographer, which helps, you know.
Yeah.
And because he's at Cinema Makeup School, and because he's, you know, he has access to all these different artists who come in and do this. Joel Harlow, the friggin' makeup he did on Ron Pipes is brilliant, beautiful. And so it's like, but that's what I'm saying. So he just said, Shannon, if I were you, before you put out this 80,000 word watered down version of your book, just just offer it for a month and see what happens. And I did, and I've been really, you know, I've been happy with the response. I mean, people have been really great. And I'll be honest, you know, the one thing I will say this to anyone who's listening right now is I apologize. It's not from lack of working. What it is just the amount of photos that I am taking, and I've rescanned them, I am watermarking them, and I'm putting them in an online gallery that anyone who bought the book will have access to.
Well, that's
and
fantastic.
I don't even know how many pictures there is. But if it looks this way, if I was going to put this, because people keep saying, hey, is it going to be available on paper? Well, I'm going to be very blunt. The only way I'm going to put this on paper is if I hit, a few thousand sales. If I get a few thousand sales, I'll think about putting it out on paper. But the truth of the matter is that if I put it on paper, I couldn't have all these photos available.
Wow, that's true.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I just couldn't. It's just the printing cost alone would be astronomical,
Yeah.
and I would have to charge a lot of money for these books. I would much rather someone make an investment of $45, buy 3 digital books. You put it on your iPad. You have access to all the photos, and there'll be photos that I have from the first picture I worked on, The Supernatural, all the way to Men in Black 3. I will have pictures from most of the films. Not certainly not for all the films, but for most of the films. And it's just to have access to all those pictures, to have access to all this information, and to hear these stories. It's like it's not that big of it. If I have to charge, if I put it on in printed form, it's going to run
Yeah.
$45 to $60 a pop.
No, it's a whole new world we're living in, and I think I mean I got a huge, vast library of reference books, and I don't know how many tons it is, but but I look at the amount of ebooks that I have, and I find myself reading more and more ebooks than I actually do an actual book. I don't have a reader; I just read them off the computer, But
right, and here's the thing: is what you're saying is that's the truth of the matter. Is that this is we have to look at the writing on the wall, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, Jerry. The plan is this: come January 22nd, I don't know when this is gonna air, but come January 22nd, I'm taking the unedited book off the market.
Wow!
And unfortunately, for those people who are in Europe, because of the value-added tax problem, because starting in January, now any kind of digital commerce that happens between the United States and different countries, every country has to be paid 17.5% of the cost of the digital download. So I would have to charge more money, collect that money, and then send it to the various governments. So right now Gumroad is not set up to do that.
Wow. So
having said that, when it goes to when the edited version gets to Amazon and gets to Apple and the other outlets that it's going to go through a company called BookBaby, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit down and I'm going to read this book out loud as an MP3, and that will go on Gumroad. So for people who are working in shops and have headphones on, and are sculpting, or driving, the 40 minutes in the morning from their home to the studios where they're working, who want to hear it, I will probably release an audio version of the book in February.
Wow, that's great. Put some sound effects in there. Do you have the old-time sound effects like the guys, with the coconuts making the sound of the horses?
Yeah. Or I can just do this. which is pretty much sound effect enough.
Yeah. Okay, gumroad.com, right?
Gumroad.com. I'm rubber, you're glue.
Okay. Yes. People gotta check this out. When I mentioned to some friends that I was going to get you on the show, like your Facebook friends and stuff, they said, "Oh my God, the book is great." I mean, it's so cool to have that instant sort of communication from people. When I mentioned that you were going to be on there, the people that had ordered the book, talking about, I guess there's like some. Is it fair to say that you sort of reveal some secrets that?
Well, I will tell you, because I thought about this, and I thought, whenever you're going to tell your experiences, the two things that I promised myself I wouldn't do is there's no name calling. Like, I don't come out and say, oh, so-and-so's an asshole and was a jerk and I hated him.
Yeah.
No, it's not my place to say. At the same time, I don't write anything that I heard. You know what I'm saying? Or I try not. Yeah. Like if someone says to me, a lot of things happen. I would be working somewhere and somebody go, God, I just heard that so-and-so did this. Oh, my God, really? That's
all that hearsay.
I didn't want to. Yeah, I don't want to print anything that I heard. Except unless someone said it to me directly. If someone said something to me directly, then I put it in the book. So good, bad, or indifferent, it's there. Now, of course, not every single incident that I have is in the book. And I'll be honest, I mean, it is a kind of a rocky road. There are some things that happen that are not very good, and some things that happen that are quite surprising. But all I can say is I'm just reporting what I experienced, and I'm going to leave it up to the reader to decide whether or not it was my youthful arrogance, my youthful stupidity, or whether or not, there were people that I worked with that were bullies or, mean, or maybe under enormous amounts of pressure. But whatever the case, I mean, it's just there for you to read. And not all of it's bad. I mean, some of it's funny. I hope a lot of it's funny,
I have heard that it's very funny.
Well, there's some moments in there. I mean, I don't think I'll be giving it away too much. I will leave, the truth of the matter is one of my favorite stories is I was working for Sonny Berman. Now, Sonny was an ex-Marine sergeant, and he was, the stories he told me, now again, I could have printed those, but I didn't do it, but he told me some pretty amazing Vietnam flashback stories. But he actually had a live rattlesnake in his shop, and I hate snakes. I hate them. I am not a snake person. My wife could tell. My wife could write a book about Shannon and his snake phobias. But but one day, I'll never forget, he drove up on his blue BMW motorcycle, and sitting in between his legs was a box, and it was a little, from a pet store, it said, somebody loves me. And on the other side it said, I found a home. And he walked up to me and he said, son, today's the day you're going to get rid of that fear of snakes. And I was like, oh, what? And so he literally, it was a mouse that was inside his box, and he dropped it in the cage with the rattlesnakes. And he had his hands, military instructor hands, gripped on my shoulders, forcing me to watch the snake eat. And because he thought that if I watched the rattlesnake strike the mice and swallow the mouse, that it would all be demystified. But phobias are not rational fears; they're irrational fears of things. So, what Sonny didn't know is my eyes were closed the entire time.
Well, now to me, since I have a huge phobia of snakes, I think there's a reason why we have a fear of things. It's a safety precaution,
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. And it's funny, and really one of the sweetest guys I, ever worked for, and I loved him. I loved working for Sonny. I didn't think that I would, because, when you meet him, he's this imposing, the full metal jacket, Marine sergeant, and you're kind of going, well, how's this going to work? But it was nothing could have been clearer. The hierarchy was clear. It was, you had a duty, you did your duty, and you were rewarded. It was just, it was like anything else.
Now, the funny thing is like you have this fear of snakes, but you love reptiles in the sense of dinosaurs.
I think it's the lack of limbs. I really do. I think it's the lack, because, I love dinosaurs. And I love turtles and iguanas.
Yeah.
My whole life was, raised about that stuff. But there's just something about this weird slithering thing that I just don't dig, honestly. So.
Well, here's the thing. So if you're going to take the book off the market,
I am. The unedited version goes off the market on January 22nd. This is true.
I would definitely get this book. And so it's, I would say, Gumroad, Gumroad.
Gum, like mother. Gum, like chewing gum, road.
Okay.
Gumroad, yes, .com. I'm Rubber, You're Glue.
I'm Rubber, You're Glue. What a great title for a book that, I hear it's life-changing. I don't want to go over top and everything.
Life-changing.
Yes, people, they read this book.
They will be life-changing, yes.
I've heard there are people that have wanted to be in the film industry all their lives. They read this book and they realize, well, you know what? I'm not going to get in the film industry. No. It's a cautionary tale. It's a cautionary tale.
Yes.
It's great having you.
Think twice.
Yes, absolutely. Always. And look both ways. I don't know. Yeah. But Shannon Shea, it's fantastic having you on the show. I think you're awesome.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, sir.
I love when we get to hang out. It's always so much fun. And
yes, absolutely.
I think you're so creative, and I'd like to see you performing more. I would. We here in our house we went through all of the Phantom Harbor stuff, and goes, what? Shannon is really talented. So,
oh gosh, well, my wife and I do that show. That's my wife Tracy and I. We do Phantom Harbor together, and we have, trust me, Phantom Harbor isn't dead. It is just in dry dock, and there are some things that we want to do. There's definitely some things we want to do. I mean, Tracy, one of the episodes that we want to write is that she wants the Goblin character, the big hairy character. She wants him to have his foray into the world of high fashion and put on a fashion show, which of course the captain is completely against. And we're thinking of how we're going to do that. But my thing is, and I told this to her, I said, I am not going to go back to the harbor until we can build a proper Goblin suit, because everyone loves the Goblin. The Goblin gets more fan mail than the captain ever does. And so I just, until I can have an actor that I can act against and not just be puppeteering, a Goblin on green screen and cutting it together. I really want that interaction. I want to be able to actually act against that Goblin. And when that happens, people go back to the harbor in full force. So.
I would love to be in that show somehow, just either a name or something, or I could green screen something and send it to you.
Jerry,
yeah.
When we go back to the harbor, you are welcome to come by and play.
Oh my gosh,
you are welcome to come.
It is almost a lifelong dream, and
Tracy, I would love to have you at the harbor. Are you kidding? Are you kidding?
It's funny.
We love it.
Look, the Phantom Harbor has become part of our the family's inner circle in joke kind of thing. Not in a joke in a bad way, but we were watching something. We were watching a BBC documentary the other day, and there was a lighthouse and there was a shore and something, and Jessica says, "Hey, it's Phantom Harbor."
Phantom Harbor, there it is.
Yeah. So it's Phantom Harbors everywhere.
PhantomHarbor.com. We're there. The shows are still there, and this past year, all I did was a little 3D cartoon. For those of people who buy my Phantom Harbor 3D T-shirts, that comes with these chromadepth glasses, which are 3D that actually creates 3D with color and not with multiple images. And if you have the chroma-depth glasses, you can watch that little cartoon I put out in October, and it is entirely in 3D, and it is so
I had
much
no
fun.
idea. Wow, okay, that's cool. I'm going to have to find some glasses. I think I must have something like that around here.
Yeah.
But, Shannon, thanks so much for being on the show, and if any time in the future you got something you want to talk about, you're welcome on the show anytime.
Oh, hey, listen, thanks for having me. And like I tell all my podcasting friends, I really hope you consider me the Orson Bean of these podcasts. And if you are ever hard up for a guest, just call me and we can talk about anything from Evil to Jurassic Park and beyond.
I was looking for a Tony Randall of Poncho Guest.
Tony Randall, the Tony Randall of podcasts. I'll take that too.
But Orson Bean was fantastic. And actually, I first learned, let me tell you about Orson Bean. I learned about the orgone from Orson Bean before anyone else. I mean, before Wilhelm Reich or any of these, these
really?
Latecomers. I think it was So that's or you never know what you're going to learn from watching Match Game.
This is true. This is true.
All right.
True.
Well, thanks so
much.
much.
Well, thanks for checking me in. Thanks for being on the show.